My name's Nicole Amarteifio, and I'm the creator of the online TV show An African City.
Nicole, how did the idea for An African City come about?
Well, the idea came because I was always wanting a different image of the African continent, a different visual of African women. My whole life I was told that Africa is about poverty, war, disease, and African women fell along those same lines. So I wanted a completely different story. And so, yeah, an epiphany came to me that the African version of Sex and the City is the answer to that problem.
And the other part of the story is that you were actually living in the US, weren't you? Working as...
Yeah, I was born in Ghana, but raised abroad. And in my professional career, I started working in development. And then I decided to return to Ghana. And so if you watch the show, that's kind of what happened to these 5 ladies. They were born on the continent, raised abroad, and now they're back looking for love.
Okay, so you've got these 5 characters. Give us a very quick sense of who the 5 characters are and what the storyline is.
My goodness, the 5. So you have the 5 characters. The lead character is actress Mamia Boafo, who plays Nania, and she's the most recent returnee. So she's the one who is trying to navigate her return, what it's like to be westernized and now back in your Ghanaian culture.
To some extent, a different culture.
A different culture, exactly. So, you know, you call Ghana home, but you were raised abroad, and now you're back, so it doesn't feel like home, but you so desperately want it to be home.
Yeah.
So that's what Nania is going through. Cultural identity, self-identity, etc. Not knowing the local language, which also makes her embarrassed about, well, is she not Ghanaian enough because she doesn't understand her own language, which a lot of immigrants can relate to that. So that's the story of Nania. Then you have Sade. She's the most risque of the 5 girls, of the five ladies. She is very much of the Samantha of the show. I mean, when I picture what Samantha would be like if she was walking the streets of Accra, it's Sade. And she just says everything that's not politically correct. And then there's Ngozi, who's the religious one of the group, and the more naive one of the group, and she has a lot of ideals, a lot of aspirations, which might not be very realistic, but she's a believer in them. And she's also the youngest of the group. And then you have Makina, who returned to Ghana jobless. And that's interesting because there's some returnees who do that, who do that risk of, you know what, I don't know what occupation I'm going to have, but I'm just going to take the risk and move back home without a job and hit the pavement and find something. So that's what Makina did. And Makina is also biracial, and you'll see how that affects things in season 2.
Yeah.
And then you have the last, Zainab, and she's an entrepreneur. And there's a lot of entrepreneurial women on the African continent, and in many ways you have to be. So she represents, the entrepreneurial community.
And the series was made as a web TV series on YouTube. Describe that process.
Yeah, I was inspired by Issa Rae, who created Misadventures of an Awkward Black Girl out in Los Angeles. And I just thought to myself, well, if she can do this, do a web series and be this successful sitting in LA, well, I feel like I can do this sitting in Accra. So I did.
Yeah, but how difficult was it?
Well, actually, I think it was easier than going the network route. I mean, I could write my own scripts. I had complete creative control. I did a casting, no different than what you would do if you were trying to work with a network. And then I could choose my own production dates. I could choose the length of each episode. You know, didn't have to meet any criteria in that regard. So it was actually relatively easy.
How many views has it had on YouTube?
So it's had over 1 million views. The YouTube channel as a whole has had over 1 million views.
And per episode?
Per episode, I would say each episode has over 100,000 views. Yeah.
And you were talking earlier at Discop, and somebody was asking you a question about culturally appropriate and Sade's behaviour. Describe that. Yeah,
you know, obviously, if I'm inspired by Sex and the City and I'm trying to create the African version of it, I too started out thinking, well, what would be culturally appropriate? But I said I was not going to let that be a boundary of mine. I was going to go full-fledged. And Sade's character is certainly the most risque, and she was the one I was most worried about in terms of would Africa be ready for this? Would Ghana be ready for this?
And specifically, what would they be ready for a woman who takes back a different man each night?
Not each night.
Okay.
She has some standards. No, I'm kidding. Not each night, but she's definitely, she's just definitely the most, she's the most sexually liberated of the bunch.
Yeah.
She owns her sensuality. And in a way, she doesn't think that, she feels like society tells men that they can own their sensuality and their sexuality, but it tells women they can't.
Yeah.
So she's of this viewpoint that, no, I can. And so she lives that out in her daily life, and she has no qualms about it. So yeah, I was definitely concerned about how the online audience on the continent would respond to her, but they've loved her. They have loved her, and that proves to me that there's a new generation that is beyond what is culturally acceptable, but about living authentic life.
And there's also a difference between say and do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly, because many people on the continent will say a lot of things are not culturally appropriate, but what are they really doing behind closed doors?
And you've now got TV contracts for the series, so describe to me what those are.
Yes, so TV networks have certainly bought season 1, obviously on a non-exclusive basis, but they bought season 1,
So
and now we're in negotiation. For season 1, we sold to Ebony Life TV, Aroko TV, the Africa Channel, and Canal Plus.
Yeah.
And for season 2, we're in talks with them about season 2, about co-producing season 2.